Okay, good morning. I am Nathan Strong, that guy right there. I'm the Executive Director of Churchill Economic Development Authority here, and this is the 2019 Dairy and Livestock Summit. To welcome us, I'm going to ask Mayor Tedford to come on up and present you a welcome. City of Fallon is one of our sponsors today. They were sponsoring, they're our lunch sponsor, as well as Telegraph Coffee. I hope you're enjoying the mini scones with the coffee. And Dairy Farmers of America and Black Gold Terminals. Those are our sponsors, and here is the mayor.
No. Okay. I'm waiting for my picture to come up.
It's right there, City of Fallon.
Wow, no picture. Caitlin, what are you doing here? Caitlin works for us in marketing and communications. We made a big step to hire her full time, and this morning she's doing a lousy job. So she gets demerits for that. On behalf of the city, I'd like to welcome you all here today. I see a lot of you are from here, so I welcome you into the building. The rest of you are welcome to Fallon, and I'm thankful that you're here. I'd like to introduce Councilwoman Frost and Councilman Erickson, who are here today, and they're in on helping sponsor your lunch today also. I kind of have a busy day today. I'm going to leave here and go to meet with the FAA, and we have a little general aviation airport out here that many of you know you get FAA funds, and those are like a 93.7 grant, and we put in the 7%, so those are super grants to get. And then I have a funeral later. I'll try to get back after the funeral and have lunch with you. But you have some very interesting topics on your agenda today. Dairy farming is very important, as you who live here know, in Churchill County. When DFA came here, Dairy Farmers of America, in 2014, it was a tremendous boon for us in our community, and especially was for us in the city because they located in our business park and built that huge plant, and $100 million plant that employed 40 people. So that was great. Farming drives America, and so today your topic is right on point. Welcome today. Guess we didn't get to meet, but you got at least a year. So I hope you enjoy your time here. If you need anything, the girls are in the office right across the way. You can ask them for help or questions. But I know you didn't come to hear me talk, so you can get into your subjects here. But welcome, thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy your day here, and I hope we provide the right atmosphere for you to learn and get better at what you do. And you have some really good speakers, and I see Tom Harris is on the agenda to speak, and nobody knows Fallon better than Tom Harris. And someone once asked me years ago, this goes back to the Shirley Walker days, which Tom will remember well, that we used to do leakage study after leakage study, and then they plopped a big Walmart down in the middle of Fallon, and we could probably still do leakage studies, though that stopped with some, but I think we need to do another study. And I said, well, there's probably one on the shelf that Tom Harris had done, because we had dozens of studies that Tom Harris had done from the university. So Tom, publicly I thank you for all the studies that you've done that have your name on them for helping our community. So thank you very much. Welcome to Fallon. Have a great time and enjoy lunch, and I hope to see you back here when you have lunch. So thank you, and thank you, Nate, for not having my picture up here.
Hello, I'm Catherine Cortez Masto. Welcome to the 2019 Dairy and Livestock Summit. The livestock and dairy industries are part of a proud tradition of farming and ranching that has defined Nevada's way of life for generations, and it's been integral to our state's history and economy. I know that your business has faced many hurdles that Washington struggles to fully understand. That's why I'm working to make sure that the federal government listens to Nevadans and prioritizes your needs. Know that I'm working beside you to cut red tape that burdens your livelihoods and fighting to ensure that our farmers and ranchers are protected from harmful tariffs. I'll also continue to push to protect our natural resources and bring innovation to our agricultural community. Thank you to Nathan Strong from the Churchill Economic Development Authority for your work, and I know it was hard work in putting this event together. I'd also like to thank the Nevada Department of Agriculture, the USDA Rural Development and Cooperative Extension, and the representatives from the dairy and livestock industries for their participation in this important summit. You're the drivers of Nevada's rural economies, and I look forward to continuing to work together to protect and strengthen the Silver State and its way of life.
Thank you, and of course you can tell the senator thank you, especially for the shout out. I appreciate that. We're going to get started with our information. The first one to come up is Tom. As I said, I hope everybody's comfortable. Tom is very easy to interact with here as well. So if you have questions, if he uses too much dairy jargon or livestock or bovine jargon, please make him pause and explain something. He'll be happy to. Get your presentation going.
As long as it's not BS.
Use your clicker and get some purpose you want. I will say this much for Tom as well. As I said, this venture really started just at the beginning of February with a phone call from him for some of the other speakers who were going to be here. And he said, Nate, what do you think about doing a dairy summit? And I said, I would love to. I've been dreaming of that since we have the cluster. So thank you, Tom, and I'll get you queued up and,
All right.
and talk away.
Nate's getting started. If with the things that at the front, we have an evaluation. If you could at the end, please fill that out. We use that to come up with new subjects. We like to do this every year, and what you like and not like, and how we can change it and make it more applicable to everybody who's here. Yeah, this is the narrative. What I'm going to do is just an introduction on the start of this, and just go over a few of the, myself here. Looks like Brad Pitt, but or Brad gone to the pits. But this is we're just going to talk a little about a summary about the livestock industry. Now we get to the hard facts. This is Mike Helmar. Mike took my first class way back when Caesar was emperor. Basically, Mike is a graduate of UNR and an ag econ. He's a research analyst and works with the Food and Ag Policy Research Institute, and it's also has some people from Texas A&M. Basically, this is an area that we are very fortunate being part of. When the Farm Bill comes up, there is the USDA, which is part of the presidential executive side, and the legislative side would like their information. This is where Mike works with the University of Missouri and Texas A&M and other people to do analysis of farms, because sometimes people come up with a farm bill that's general, and it may be applicable to the Midwest or the South, but here in the West we're very different because of public lands and surface water litigation and all that. It's a different, and even dairies. What he does is does analysis and also brings down analysis here in the state of Nevada. It gives some ideas of what's going on. Mike's going to talk about trends. Very much in the news, international trends, national prices, and then down to the ag prices, which are milk, alfalfa, and cattle, which are very big. What are the forecasts? And we'll go through this, and it's kind of unsettling what's going on right now. And what we want to do is kind of get information so we can develop this cluster that we're doing. Oops. And after Mike is George Knapek. George is from Texas A&M. George is the program leader of the program farms. We're going to meet a little later with hopefully with some dairymen to update these farms. He's going to go over how the farm bill is going to impact our dairy farms, and then some of the trade and other things have been going on. It's very important what forecasts and gives some overview of what he has. Nate will be the MC of our last one, really to talk about what's going on in Churchill County and some of the agribusiness I call cluster. We have many representatives who, with DFA, but also with other parts that make a successful dairy cluster in this state. And Central Nevada is kind of like the ag sector of the state. And things are going on that are changing. And so he's been very active. We thought we'd have some people talk about it and how some of the impacts may happen to the state and to here in Fallon and Churchill County. Now, why we have this summit? One of the things about a month ago, the Nevada Department of Ag had a meeting, and I was asked to do something on looking at farm prices. And I was looking at USDA data. And if you can see, in 2013, ag prices were at its highest at around 124 billion. Since that time, there's been a 50% decrease. And there's been some, what's happening? And we'll get to Nevada here a little later, that there's a lot of farm distress. I don't know if you watch the national news a lot, but it seems like the last couple months since we've been working on this, there's at least every 2 weeks a story of a farm or a dairy, especially in the Midwest, going under and some of the financial problems. People, and George will talk about this, is this similar to something we had in the 1980s? 1980s we had a big financial problem. In the 70s, when Earl Butz was head of Secretary of Ag, we were fence row planning. And there's a lot of supply, and all of a sudden the prices dropped. When prices drop, prices of land drops, foreclosures and all that. There was some big crisis. And we're going to talk about some similarities and dissimilarities with going on with the 1980s. They have a very good paper on this at Texas A&M looking at this contrast. And it's something to, I think, be aware. It's not being highly publicized right now, but in many areas, and especially farm areas, and especially this, it's something that needs to be looked at. So when I looked at that, I said, okay, let's take a look at the state of Nevada. State of Nevada, now we have droughts, we have surface water irrigation, and sometimes prices increase, but also there's the cattle cycle and all that. In 2014, Nevada had its highest net cash farm income of about $294 million. That has dropped in 2017 to about $22 million, or there's been about a 93% drop in net cash farm income. That broke me up. I wasn't aware of how big that was, and so that's just one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this, because of that decrease and what it could mean. And this is where some information that Mike has on prices, our trade policies, that compounded or something like that, and things like interest rates and all those. This is something that's been very dire, and so in many areas there's some financial problems, which I know many of the people who work in the ag industry are very interested in what's going on. And that's because the ag sector has linkages. This is something I always talk about. You have economic sectors, and one of them is the basics industry. And what the basic industry does, they export goods and services outside the region. They bring money in. And the idea of export base is that these export base bring money in to cause other generation of economic activity in the local economy. If we think about our gold mines in Elko, or even here, when ag prices go down, or the ag sector has problems, the whole economy has problems. And that's because the money coming in is less. Same thing with inputs, and they're not buying as much inputs. This inputs is something we're working on, and Nate's working a lot on this. There's a thing called import substitution. If you can kind of plug the hole, and what's happening is a lot of people buy their goods and services outside the state. Well, if we can plug that hole and we can have input suppliers to alfalfa hay, input suppliers to the dairy cattle, those kind of things, that could generate larger multipliers in our local economy. That's one of the things we're doing. And then with the service sector, those are people who, the grocery store, the accountant, the insurance, they get their local economic activity from purchases of the basic sector that brings in a larger number of people to purchase goods and services. Again, like Mayor Ted was saying, when we did some leakage studies, if we can remove some of those leakages, you end up having bigger and bigger multipliers because of the generation of money. And us as households, our expenditures. If you think of it in the dairy industry, as farmers have lower incomes, they're going to make lower expenditures, and that ripples through the local economy. And so I did a quick little analysis because I want to have more time for Mike and George to talk. Basically, looking at the economic linkages, I use a model called Implant that looks at the linkages of sectors. And the dairy sector for ours is very much an exporting sector. Now, we have done something with the cluster where we have increased with the Dairy Farms of America is doing something that Nevada needs to address, I think, with a lot of its natural resource industries. We do not have much processing. Gold is not processed here. Lithium, which they're building a new mine in Humboldt County, is not processed here, but they're looking at processing. You get that extra dollar if you can process it. And this is where the DFA dry milk plant comes in. It used to be that they could ship their milk over to California and get into the milk orders. But now, if we can process it, we can get other generation of other economies of scale and multipliers here. This is what's going on. And so what's happened is the DFA, hopefully what will happen when we go through this financial crisis, is that it'll cause a cluster. In other words, if they expand and have their more expenditures, they will require more milk. Hopefully we'll have more dairies. More dairies mean more alfalfa production. And so you, instead of seeing what I call Nevada water going over the top, we may keep Nevada water here. We're feeding our dairy cattle another that we're also processing it. And so we're getting a more generation of economic activity. Now, because the dairy sector has linkages to the economy, well, number 12, there, with the model I use, it has for the state of, or county of Churchill is 164 sectors. Sectors such as alfalfa sector, sectors such as insurance sector, different sectors. Dairy rates 12th highest at about $338 million. So it's a big sector here in the local. Combine that with the alfalfa, combine that with the milk powder plant, dry milk powder, you got a pretty big cluster. And it has linkages to the local economy, and this is something we always talk about, is also building those linkages. So from 38 million, if you total economic impact, it's about 44 million total. Because when the dairy increases its activity, it will buy more inputs from the local agricultural supplier. That agricultural supplier might need to buy more accounting services. That accountant may need to buy more paper to meet those demands, and so you get what we call a churn. So with what's kind of nice about dairies, I'll tell you this, as opposed to I've done studies on gold mining, is that dairies have a big backward linkage. They buy local goods and services locally. Mines don't have that as much, but their export value is close a lot bigger. But we have in dairies and agriculture, you have much more backward linkage. Now it turns out about another $6 million is generated in this economy because of it. Hopefully what we can discuss later is how to build those forward linkages. And so we even get more. And even the backward linkages of having more alfalfa production and maybe more dairy cattle and supplies will even be greater. So basically, we want to end that there so we have time for Mike and George. We're going to talk about what's going on in the ag sector. And I think it's kind of an underreported type of what's going on. There's some stress going on, and we need to be aware of it. And with the foreign trade problems we have with China and all that, that's also impacting the agriculture sector much more. So, Nate, what I'll do, I'll just turn it over to... Yes, ma'am.
I got a question for you, Tom, and this just came up in last week, and it's kind of a question and a statement. The new 2017 NAS data has been released.
Oh, yeah.
And in looking at that data from our market values of sales from 2007, 2012, and now 2017, the only industry that's increased, and it's just increased a little bit, is livestock sales. Hay has decreased, the dairies, the milk prices have decreased, and then Nevada took a huge hit on vegetables, melons, those type. So So when we started looking at that, because we're writing a beginning farmer and rancher proposal right now, we started asking ourselves why and what's going on there. And one of the things is our average age of a farmer is 59.6 years of age.
That's a pup.
But what we're seeing is our land in farms is increasing,
Yeah.
but our number of operators is decreasing. So when we start looking at those questions of why that happens, and of course we're looking at beginning farmers and ranchers, we're identifying, and maybe people could think about it, but I'd also like your input on it as to why.
Okay.
How come that's happening? And because it's hard for young people to get the capital to even enter the ag industry these days.
Okay, let me, two things. It's kind of interesting about that generation, the transfers. When I was getting my doctorate at Oklahoma State in the 70s, we were worried about that in the 70s. So it's one of these things, I always say, one time I went over to the San Francisco Fed to listen to Alan Greenspan. I thought Alan was going to talk about, at that time we had almost zero to negative interest rate. I thought he was going to talk about that. He was talking about that the home baseball team is aging, there's nobody on the bench. This is true for the whole economy. You read a lot of things about, I call national economists, they're talking about there's a labor shortage, and there is. And in farming, people who are retiring, can they pass it on? Now, Stacy and the RMA, they do a very good project, extension on how to transfer, which is a big thing. I think there's going to be a lot of transfer of wealth. Two things, transfer of wealth. I think people think in 1776, they thought IRAs were IRAs didn't come in until 1984. And so what used to happen, people had pensions. And so the guy probably died, the wife would take it, but when she passed on, the pension went back to the business. Now, people have these 401ks and everything. After they pass on, there's going to be a transfer of wealth to different things. And the same thing with this stuff with that you were talking about. In fact, Greg Mosier, the dean of business, his family owns a farm in Kansas. When their parents died, there's about 4 siblings. 2 of them wanted to sell their land to a bunch of doctors because they could raise pheasants. And so they had to outbid these people. And so transference of land is more. So yes, there's not as many people coming into agriculture, young folks, because it's a little harder. Now, as to Nevada's always had larger farms because George and Mike may get into this. Agriculture, if you take economics, you always have this average cost curve to go down and go back up because of this economy. What happens in agriculture is kind of like this. As you get bigger and bigger, you have more and more economies of scale. So that's factoring in too. Larger firms, if you look at the agricultural census, you'll see a large number of small farms, but they only produce about 5% of the total output. There's only about, I'm going to say 2% on this big side, and they almost produce 90%. And that's one of the things that it's a national trend. As to ag sales, which one's going, I don't know if you saw the prices move up and down, and Mike will show you that. 2 things happened. We had a drought, but when this was done in 2017, Mike, that might have been prices were low or something. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. But this snapshot is not annual because we have years that prices go up. So it could be that. And that also suggests to me the problem we have in agriculture a lot is variability. You're in good years, bad years, good years, bad years. So you have ag finance to help you through that, and hopefully you can keep on going. That's what we do programs with Stacy with RMA, risk management, to get through these risky times. Because all of us have seen prices of alfalfa hay jump high and then jump low. I know, Tom, you probably seen high and low. It's a characteristic of agriculture. Now, the census is very good, but just remember, it's every 5 years. Were prices high that year or low that year? And so maybe Mike and George might answer that a little bit. But more information. Ag is getting older. I will tell you that. If you have more than one sibling, and this has happened In Texas, a lot. If you have land next to Dallas, you may want to sell that for real estate, grow houses. And so you may have, this has always been a transfer. And this is why I think there's one program that she puts on, that Stacy on this transfer of farms from how you transfer that is very important, because if you don't, you can have a can of worms family-wise.